Alright, hey guys, Miss Harper here for our function notation notes. Alright, one first thing that we want to know, fun fact, is that f of x is a fancy word for y. Alright, it's like drinking water with your pinky out. It's just a little bit fancier. So this says f of x, and that's how we read that. F of x is a fancy word for y. So it's just a different way that we would write like y equals. So you might see something that says f of x equals, or you might see something that says y equals, and those both mean the same thing. Now that we know that, now you want to know this. Sometimes you might see something like this. We read that as f of 2. Alright, what this is telling me, well, notice what the 2 is in place of. It's in place of the x, right? So this is giving me an x value. It's saying x equals 2. So the way that we handle this is we plug in 2 for x and solve for y. Alright? So one of two things will happen. They either give us an x value and we find his y value, or they give you the y value and we find his x value. So next door here's another thing that you may see. F of x equals 2. Alright, so pause and note the difference between this version and this version. Okay, this one gave me an x value. What do you think this one is representing? Well, we just talked about that f of x. That f of x is just a fancy word for y. So this is saying y equals 2. If they give us a y value, we plug in 2 for y and solve for x. Most of the time you'll see it's this first version, but on occasion you will see this second version. You just gotta pay attention. Who did they give you, x or y? And then you solve for the opposite. So let's try. So first notice we got a bunch of functions. We have an f function, a g function, h function, j function, k function, and a p function. So we gotta pay attention to that. So here's 3 steps I would go through. My first thing, I would identify what did they give me. Did they give me an x value or did they give me a y value? Alright, so j of 4. Well, looking back up here, what we just wrote down is that this is giving me an x value. So this says x equals 4. That's the first thing I would write. The second thing I would write is I would pay attention to the function they're giving me. They are talking about the j function. So I'm going to write that one down. J of x equals 3 minus 5x. Okay, so now I know what value I was given and I know what function I'm working with. After that, we plug in. Remember that they gave me x equals 4, so I'm going to replace my x using parentheses. Alright, it's really important here, guys, that you are using those parentheses. So all I did was I plugged in this 4 in place of the x. And then we simplify. You can plug that whole bit into your calculator at one time. 3 minus 5 times 4. And we get negative 17. Alright, so j of x equals negative 17. And that would be my answer right here. Alright, so again, identify what value they gave you, identify the function they're talking about, plug in, and solve. Let's look at our second one. F of x equals negative 20. So look back up, is it this version or that version? Well, this one is telling me y equals negative 20. So first I wrote down what value they gave me. Second, I need to write down my f function. This says f of x equals 4x, and I found that right over here. Okay, so since they gave me the y, I'm going to plug in for y. Remember, f of x is just a fancy word for y. They gave me y, so now I solve for x. So I'm going to divide both sides by 4, and we get x equals negative 5. and that would be my final answer here. Alright, so I want you guys to try the next 4 problems on your own. So pause the note video and you can check when you're done. Alright, if you are joining me again, I hope that you paused your video and practice these on your own. Alright, so here in the green, they gave us an x value. Now here's where you got to be really careful, guys. Wherever you see a variable, you have to use parentheses. Remember earlier this year I talked about why it's important to replace your variable using parentheses. These are the reasons why. If you got -8, alright, so let's look at our calculator. If you got -8, unfortunately you entered it in incorrectly. Alright, so you might have entered it in like this. 2 times -2 squared. Well, this confuses your calculator a bit, and he ends up giving you the wrong number. Alright, so again, it's really important that you list like this. Using your parentheses, replace your x or whatever variable with the negative or with whatever number, okay? +8 is the correct answer for that one. -2 squared means -2 times -2, which is +4, and that's why we end up with +8. Alright, on this one, let's see, h of x equals 13, so they gave me a y value, so I plugged 13 in for my y value, and I solved for its x value. On this one, they gave me another x value. I wrote down my p of x function, and again, using those parentheses, I replaced my variable, my x, with the number, and then I solved for y, or p of x. Alright, last one right here. Again, it's very important that you are just replacing your variable using parentheses. Alright, so this is the correct way to write that, and the correct way to type it into your calculator. So again, this was -x squared. So my x value was +4. So I did the negative on the outside. I only replaced my variable with the parentheses and the number. So -16 is the correct answer for this one. Alright, if you typed it in your calculator this way, you would have got +16, which is the wrong answer. So again, be very careful how you're inputting these things into the calculator. So let's try downstairs here from graphs. Now this can be a little confusing, so make sure you're watching my cursor, okay? Alright, so find f of x equals 2. So this is telling me y equals 2. So first, identify the value they gave you. Second, use the correct function. They gave me the f function. So I'm going to go, I have 2 graphs here. One of them is f of x, one of them is g of x. Alright, so I'm going to go to my f of x function. Alright, and I'm going to go on my y-axis to +2. So here I am on my y-axis at +2. Now I need to find his x value. Those run left and right. So there's nothing over here to my left, but over here to my right, I find a point. I'm going to write that point down. That's the point 3, 2. 3, 2. So as we can see, when y is 2, his x value is 3, and we get x equals 3. So these ones can be a little tricky. You gotta be very careful. Alright, on our next one, g of 2. That is giving me an x value. So I'm going to start like this. They gave me the x value of 2, so I'm going to go to my